Hi, Neil, and welcome to the podcast show, Paying a Flutter. How is it?
Hi, Nana. Thank you for inviting me along. Everything's fabulous over here in England. And again, thank you for asking me onto your show.
I'm so glad that you made it because me and several remote investors is looking into social housing, and you have been or are a property expert in this area. So I'm gonna pick your brain, and the listeners, I hope, and the viewers, I hope that they will get a lot of value of it. So,
Yes, of course.
So who is Neil?
Oh, who is Neil? So very, very briefly, my background, when I left school, I joined the army for about 14 years. I was in communications engineer. I left that, I set up my own IT company. I had an IT company again for about 12 years, where I was supporting primary schools, the police of some of them, a lot of consultancy work. But I was kind of in the rat race. I was working really, really hard and having my own business, having staff and things like that. But I was actually in the business, and rather what we teach now is to be working on the business. So I kind of got a bit fed up with it. And I had a letter a leaflet back then through the door from Martin Roberts, Homes Under the Hammer. And if you've seen that program yet. Yeah. So I had that come through the door. Martin is sitting in a bath full of money saying, come and learn how to learn from property. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So I went and I did my training back then, a long time ago with them, and then went on the program, very similar to the sort of thing you did and the guys that you've done, other people you know have done, and aimed for getting financial freedom. So within 2 years, I bought enough properties to replace my income from the IT business. So wow. I stopped doing the IT business, and then I was okay. At that point, the company that trained me asked me if I would become a mentor, a coach, and a speaker, a trainer for them, which I did for about 8 years. So I did all of that for about 8 years, got a lot of experience, met a lot of fabulous people, trained a lot of wonderful people, and then decided that more recently in the last couple of years, decided to go and do things on my own, really because I could spend more time with less people, giving them more of myself and my coaching and my mentoring than having lots and lots of people coming through. So that's me very, very quickly.
Yeah, that sounds like a really amazing journey. So have you ever gone back to the IT?
No, it's funny, when I stopped doing the IT, I would keep getting people calling me up and say, look, can you come and sort this out for us? And I'm like, look, I don't do it anymore. And they said, well, we know you don't do it anymore, but can you come back? And I was like, no, I won't.
So you didn't like that environment, but
the IT environment was good. Working in schools was lovely. There was always tea and cake in the staff room, but it was but it was a nice environment to work in. But I just was working so many hours. I was getting up starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, not finishing till sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning the following day. Because I was doing things like, proposals or logging into people's servers to make sure they were okay. Yeah. I did have staff doing it, but a lot of it was down to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Then I understand why you left the space. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, social housing, could you explain what it is? And yeah.
Okay, all right. So there are two real elements of social housing. There's the typical scenario where you might have a normal property where you just rent to somebody who's claiming some kind of benefit, whether that's housing benefit or universal credit, or there are lots of other benefits they might be claiming. So that's where you're just renting to someone like that. Or there's another option where you would rent the property to an organization. So that could be a charity, it could be a council, it could be an organization, housing association, where they will take the property from you for a number of years, and they will then manage it all for you. And all that happens is you get money popped into your bank account every month, which is a kind of a hands-off approach, which I guess is much more useful for people like yourself that are abroad.
Yeah.
So there's two elements to it, really.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So why does it have a stigma?
Okay, so there's always a stigma. Unfortunately, I don't know what it's like over there where you guys are, but where we are, we have programs like Can't Pay, Take It Away, or the social housing, that they'll look at all the bad people, and there's good and bad in every walk of life, no matter what you do. In the IT world, there was good and bad. In property, there's good and bad. In tenants, there are good and bad, and the same in social circles. They have this kind of stigma that whenever you go to social, they're layabouts, they won't do anything, they feel entitled, they feel that everything should be given to them. And there are some of them that do feel like that, without a doubt. But there are also ones that actually want to work or want to try and better themselves and just want a home somewhere to live that's safe and going to be theirs for a long period of time. There is a different way of talking to social housing tenants if you're dealing directly with them. And you just got to understand where they come from. If you're the kind of person who can't do that, then social housing isn't really for you. If you can't bring yourself to learn about other people and understand their level and where they come from, then you're not really going to get on well with it. I've had people in the past that I've taught or worked with, and sometimes they're like, oh, why don't you go and get a job, you layabout? But that's not the same for everybody. Some social housing people are in social housing because their wages are so low. So we have nurses and up in Scotland, for example, who just don't get enough money, really, to pay for the rents that they're in. Same in London. So, effectively, the council will top up their money to allow them to rent somewhere. And they're not rubbish people. They're nice people, and they're just people that are trying to get through. So there's a stigma, unfortunately, and unfortunately, television will pick on the bit that they can get the most entertainment from or get the most sort of wow factor from, won't they?
Yeah, that's sad. So let's say, because you have a variety of different tenants, right? You have profiles. Yes. Which one do you prefer, and which one is more stable? Is social housing more stable, or is private? I don't want to say normal, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I wouldn't say there's a big difference for stability-wise, because if you provide a good service, you're going to get good tenants. I even have HMOs where I have tenants that stay 2-3 years because they love the property.
Yeah.
With a social housing scenario, the best part of it is if you're going to give it to a council or a charity or an organization, that you will be pretty much hands-free. It'll really be, here's the property, you take care of it, you put the people in there that need to be in there, and just give me the money at the end. All I'm going to do is provide you with a really nice property, something good to stay with. And that can be 5-10 years, even just 1 year. I've just recently rented a property to a local council for the refugees coming out, not the Ukraine refugees, the previous ones coming out, they were looking for somewhere to put people, because they've literally lifted up what they can carry, come to the country to get away from war, in Afghanistan, and then they've got nothing. Yeah. So, the council have taken the property on for me for a year initially. They want a 12-month contract, and they're going to pay a guaranteed amount every single month, and I have to do nothing.
Yeah.
So that if you're remote would work really well for you.
Yeah.
For me, it was just, look, I've got this property, I can help people. Let's offer it to them. I could get the same rent or more if I did it privately, but I decided that, let's help some people out if we can.
You have a good heart. So what responsibility does the landlord have compared to private rentals?
Okay, so you have a couple of responsibilities. You must insure the property as normal. So that would be a landlord's insurance for the buildings, the external, anything external or outside of the property, windows, roofs, any damage like that, you've got to have that insurance in place. And insurance for social housing is available as normal insurance for buy-to-lets. And you have to still, if you are providing a property that has a gas appliances, there is still the reliance on the landlord to make sure that gas safety is done every year. So there's an inspection of the gas appliances in the property every year. Now, your council or your organisation may take that responsibility off you and do it for you, but you as a landlord are still legally bound to make sure that's done. There's also new recent rules on electrical safety. That's got to be done every 5 years. But that's about it, really. And that's your responsibility. But you would do that anyway.
Yeah. So why is it hard to get lending?
That's a good question. I knew you were going to say it's not anymore. It used to be, and it used to be very difficult, and there'd be maybe one or two providers in the market. But there are now 10 or more that are out there that openly are happy to provide lending on the social housing scene. We have a great broker over here in Chippenham who's got about 12 people, a guy called Wayne Gray. And he comes and talks at some of our events, and he says that he can get at least 10 providers offering social housing. They are a little bit picky about the tenants sometimes. So they might say, we don't want perhaps rehabilitation from jail, or we don't want people that have drug addictions, or we don't want people that are arsonists. So sometimes, of those 10, one of them might say, well, I don't want this type of tenant. Well, that's fine. And then say, well, we'll give you the property, but you can't put these type of people in there. And that's okay.
Why do you think the attitude has changed?
There's so much more responsibility on governments now. There's so much more demand and requirement for social housing homes. There are even brokers coming into the market now that are brokering between you, the landlord, and the association. They're coming to, they're approaching. I've been approached so many times by brokers now saying, have you got a property? We'll take it off you for 5 years, guaranteed, sort of thing. And what they do is they take a little bit of the middle. So, if your rent was, let's say, £700, they might offer you £650 for a 5-year contract, and they'll get the 50 in the middle. But they're doing it on such a large scale, they're making money that way.
Yeah. So like you mentioned that it's much easier now to get lending, and you mentioned it depends which type of tenant profile you're using. Do you know, I know you're not the broker, but when you have tried to mortgage your property, which easiest tenant profile is to get lending on?
I think it is really, really independent. I don't think there's any one that's worse than the others. Really, I really don't. There used to be, actually, if you're doing things for people that are seeking asylum of some sort, that's very, very easy to do at the moment. Very easy to get lending on those kind of things. The problems come when they don't want perhaps someone that's more so perhaps the British tenants that are more so people that have maybe arsonists are one big one, because they don't want someone who's been been involved in setting fires in their property, because it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, we don't want someone that might just set fire to the place, and completely trash it. So they're a little bit hesitant from that point of view. But really, I don't think there are any. It changes, and it's the same with any mortgage. If you talk to the broker, you can say, well, what kind of tenants are we having problems with? But there are all sorts of charities out there that are looking for all sorts of accommodation.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you get higher rates when it's social housing compared to the private sector?
You can in some circumstances. Normally they'll try and come in at the housing benefit rate, which can be less depending on your area than a private rental. In some areas it can be the same or can be more, but you can always ask for more. You can, so for example, we had a lady in London who had a property, and she was one of our clients and one of our students, and she said she really wanted to offer the property. I think it was a 3-bedroom flat to the local authority in London. The local authority in London said, well, yeah, we'll take it off for you at the housing benefit rate, which was I'll make up some figures. These aren't the actual figures. We can do it to you for £1,200 a month, 1,200. And she knew that on the private side, she could get nearer £1,400, an extra £200 a month. And although there was an extra £200 there, she wanted to deal with this with the social housing, but she thought £1,200, she wasn't really making that much money. She was making maybe £100 a month. So she went back to them and said, look, I'll do it to you. Well, first of all, she said, well, I can't do it. And I said, no, go back and negotiate. So then she went back and said, look, I'm happy to give it to you, but I do need £1,400, which is the standard rate for the property, to make some money on this property as well as helping you guys out. And they came back and said, yeah, fine, we'll do that. So they'll always offer lower, I think, because councils have budgets like everybody else, and they want to keep the budgets down. But there is always a little bit extra. So, for example, what's going on at the moment, the property I've just rented out went out at the going rate for what would normally be a private rental property.
Yeah.
And they're paying a little bit more than perhaps the housing benefit rate.
Have you ever heard that they pull out from a deal?
No. I've never had a council or a housing association pull out. What you do need to be careful of is if you're working with a charity, because there are lots of charities popping up all the time, and you need to research them and make sure they've been around for a longer period of time. Because you get in UK, you do get things like they may set up a project for 12 months and say, right, we want to help this type of person for 12 months. Yeah. It might be young children that are leaving care. So we want to help in this area, children that are leaving care. So we're going to put some money into this pot for 12 months to do that. This is a project, and it's a kind of a pilot project.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of that 12 months, there may not be any more funding. So they may say to you, we'll take your property for you for 2-3 years, but the questions you're going to be asking is, okay, so what happens in a year's time? Are you funded fully? And they'll say, no, we've only got guaranteed funding for a year at a time. We have to reapply for the funding next year. So that might be more risky. You might say, well, okay, well, I don't really want to jump in that boat, or we'll do it for a year when you've got the funds, but then, realize we may have to pull it on you in a year's time if you don't have the funding.
Yeah.
So you've got to research them, really. You've got to see. There are places in England where you can check on company's house, where you can, how long have the company been there? You can ask if they're a public body. You can ask for their accounts. You can ask for these questions. They won't hide. If you say, how long have you been doing this? And they say, we've only just started. We've been doing it a few months. Then that's when you start asking the questions a bit more. Yeah,
that was a great tip. So, and regarding landing on the rates, is it the same as the private sector, or is it more higher, or what's your take?
Very, very similar. There's not a big difference anymore. There used to be, and of course, if you're going into a scenario where they're a little bit more risky, like the arsonists, you might find that it's a higher rate. But more often than not, they're very, very similar, and then the rates haven't changed an awful lot in the last few years. So yeah, very good.
So could you explain the difference, like DSS and universal credit, and like a council contract? Yeah, if it's all right.
Okay. So DSS is a very old term, and it stands for housing benefit students. It was housing benefit tenants, and it's a very old. So DSS was the original term. That then became housing benefit, but DSS has been around for a long time. So sometimes you'll see in adverts, accept DSS tenants, or they don't tend to use the word housing benefit. It's just a very old term. And that basically just means that if I was a DSS tenant, that I have been assessed, that I am allowed a certain amount of money each month from the government to help me live. It's not just one benefit. It's now been rolled into something called universal credit, which is a new term. And basically universal credit is 5 different benefits. Oh. So it's things like housing benefit. It could be disability allowance. It could be, job seekers allowance, not working allowance. And what they've done is they've rolled it all into one package, giving them one chunk of money, which covers all of those disabilities or benefits. Yeah. Whereas the old system is housing benefit. There are still housing benefit tenants around because not everybody's moved over to universal credit yet. Yeah. So it was supposed to have done in a couple of years, but it's been going on for years now and it's not all gone over. So that's where the person themselves gets a allowance of some sort for whatever it is reason. Now, that can be manipulated in a way that you can say that I will only give my house to that person if you, Mr. Council, pay me that money direct for the housing benefit. So universal credit will be the rent part of the universal credit and the rest will go to the tenant. Yeah. Or housing benefit, it'll be all the housing benefit comes to me. So you can ask for that. You can say, look, I'm only going to rent you this property if you give me the money, because the people that are going in there may not be great with money. They may spend it all as soon as they get it. They may not have very good bank accounts, or they may like to go and spend their money on booze whenever they get it, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You that's for various reasons. I've got one lady who's only in her 30s and she's had a stroke, and she struggles to read. So she's okay, but she's lost sort of vision on one side of her face and a little bit of movement. And so she can't read text and documents properly. So we applied for her housing benefits come directly to us because she struggles, and we helped her fill out the forms and everything to get the housing benefit. And they said, yeah, fine. We realize there's a problem there and it's a challenge for her to do this, so we'll send you the money directly. So you can ask for various reasons.
Okay. And what is FRI?
FRI, fully repaired and insured leases. So this is where you would give your property over to an organization, and it is a commercial contract effectively. So instead of a tenancy agreement, you have a commercial contract, which is a contract between you, your company, and their company or their organization, where in that lease, or you will be saying, I want you to fully repair anything that goes wrong, any damage that's done, any painting, any carpets that get damaged, anything that happens in that property has got to be fully repaired by you when you give it back to me. You've also got to insure everything in the property against any damage. So you have malicious damage or accidental damage should the tenant drop something and you know there's or they put a nail in the wall and the pipe bursts and everything gets wrecked inside. You want them to have the insurance to cover that. So that's what that means, and that can all be written into the contract.
Yeah, and I mean, as you have several of these, and you've done it several years, do you tend to find that you get it back like you gave it to them, or do they?
The reality is no. What happens is, so there's a couple of things going on, but I'll tell you why. So first of all, every so many years, the companies or the organisations have to rebid the tender to the government to have that contract. So there's a company called Serco and there's a company called Mears. Now they're two big organisations, social housing organisations. Now you may have a contract with Serco, and you've taken a contract with Serco for 5 years. Serco are fine. They've got the contract with the government to provide housing, so they're filling their fulfilment. But then after 5 years, they've got to resubmit a tender to have another 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so Serco putting in to the government, well, we're going to take it on. We want this amount of money to take this contract on. But at the same time, Mears come in and they say, well, we want this kind of money to do the same job. And so the government might say, well, we're going to go with Mears now. So Serco have to technically give you the property back, to then Mears will then take it on for the next 5 years. So kind of, it's just a paperwork exercise, really. But at that point, Serco will say, here's your property back. And you'll say, whoa, hang on a minute. This doesn't look like I gave it to you. And what they inevitably do is, because they're lazy and they don't want to do the work, is they'll say, you go and get the quotes for the work and we'll pay for it. Or we'll give you the money to get it done. So you can then go in, get your contractors in and say, okay, well, what's it going to cost me to paint and decorate? What's the carpet's going to cost, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go back to them and say, this is what the quotes are, and they'll then send you the money. That's a normal scenario. Sometimes you will get it back in a good condition, but most of the time, if they're switching contracts, they'll be saying, well, we're not involved anymore, so we don't want to do it. But if they're then going to go for another 5 years, you can go back and do an inspection after the 5 years, say, oh, hang on a minute, this all needs putting right before you get it for another 5 years, and do it that way.
That sounds fair enough. I mean, as long as they pay for it, it's okay. And then, of course, obviously, yeah, it's maybe paying that you need to do it yourself and find the builders and etc. But yeah, they stick to the contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will always try and cut down as much as they can. So they might try and say, oh, you don't really need that good a kitchen. You can buy this kitchen, or you don't need that quality carpet or whatever. And they'll always try and get a bit cheaper. But, that's part of the negotiation.
Yeah. So what are, I think you mentioned the benefits of doing social housing. You said that it's much easier, and you just give it to organization or university friend. So which do you prefer?
Gosh, I've had experiences all of them, and actually neither is my preferred. I mean, going privately or going directly to councils. Directly is obviously a lot less trouble, a lot less, not trouble, but a lot less involvement. So I don't get calls from a letting agent to say, oh, we need to fix this, we're going to charge, it's going to cost you this. You don't get that from a council scenario. They just go and do it. If there's a problem, they'll do it. You don't ever have to go and visit for 5 years because they don't want you to, because they may be putting in vulnerable tenants. They may put people in there who are a little bit worried about strangers and things like that. So from that point of view, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more straightforward. It's a lot safer as well for you as an owner. But at the moment, the housing market and the rental market in the UK is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Here's an example for you. I've got a room that's just come available in one of my HMOs. Now, in our area, normally 550 is about right for a room in a HMO, for a double room. So I've rented that out on the agent's suggestions for 615 starting in April. And we found out that there's a couple of people. Now, we put it on the market to rent, and there was 10 people inquiring within the first hour. And during that time, the agent was speaking to a couple of people that came around to look at it. And one of the guys said, I went to look at a room and it started at 600. And when I came back, the guy said it was 700. He said, he says, there are so few rooms, and so but that some landlords are being a little bit naughty about it, and they're pushing it up much, much higher than they should. What we try to do is give it for market rent, slightly just below market rent. Ours is 615 because it's a couple going in there, so we've charged a little bit more, an extra £50 a month. But other than that, we were at 585, which is around about the right place for us.
Wow. Yeah, that's we're doing 2 refurbs at the moment, and we spoke with the letting agent first in September when we purchased the property, and then they said 700, and then now when we spoke, because we're like in the end, they're like, yeah, you can get like maybe 800, 850, and me and my fiance, we just got amazed, like, wow. Yeah. the market is yeah,
it is ridiculous here at the moment. It's just absolutely ridiculous. You can almost ask for whatever you want if you wanted to, and you would probably get it.
What has happened? I mean, Brexit happened, the COVID happened, and a lot of EU people left. So how can this boom just, like, people have reduced, but still the market is just going up?
We're coming out of sort of a little bit of, we're seeing a little bit of recovery. A lot more people getting a lot more jobs. There are a lot of jobs around now. Not as many people around to fill those jobs in certain industries, but also there's not that many properties available. A lot of landlords or potential investors are finding it difficult to find properties that are selling, that are on the market, because people just aren't putting them up. Before, people would sell and move on to another job somewhere else, or they would sell up because they didn't want the property anymore. Now they're just holding it, and they're saying, well, I might as well hold on to it because I'm so uncertain about what's going to happen. We're going to hold on to it. So that's why the demand is there, and it's always time when there's not much supply and the demand is there, you can always, the prices will go up. But it's about being sensible, because what you don't want to do is go and take silly amounts of money, because then suddenly when a lot more properties do come on the market in a year or two's time, you'll be the first one people will leave. I'm not staying here, it's too much, I'm going over there, sort of thing,
Yeah, that's true. So getting back to social housing, how can you safeguard yourself from getting paid on the different social housing organization?
Okay, well, so you're very safe if you're going with the council or a social housing provider. They're all not-for-profit organisations, so they have to be registered as charities, and they have to be registered as a social landlord. So they have to meet certain criteria. Some of that criteria is that they have a certain amount of money in the bank all the time, but they're there solely to provide accommodation for people, and they will have a contract with the government. And if you're with a contract with the government, your money's pretty much safe. It's so safe that you're not going to lose out on it. So down that route, you know, that there isn't really much you could do. I don't even take out, you can take out landlord's insurance on some of these things. So, you know, that you guarantee you get your rent if it's not paid. Don't need to with councils. It is literally guaranteed money. And the people that work in councils and housing associations are really nice people as well. They're really friendly and they're really approachable. You can work with them quite comfortably. So for the one that I've just done, they were a little bit late paying the rent on one of the months. I literally phoned them up and they said, "Oh, really sorry, we just had a restructure in the department. There's a different people working with that. We'll get that paid to you now." And it was literally, that was it. It was paid straight away. It was a couple of days late, that was all. So
Yeah.
I just kind of, this is a bit odd. It's not come in. Why is it not come in? And I'll just phone them up. So I would not worry if you can get something like that. And 9 times out of 10, you will get an extension every time because they're going to need it. You know, I know people that have had housing associations that are 20 years into it now.
Wow.
20 years without anything to do other than the gas safety cert and things like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned the council. How do you get in contact with them and like
we do
the process?
We do this on the training day. It's kind of
okay.
there is a whole process, and there are councils will prefer to work with certain individuals. They'll prefer to work with certain organizations rather than individuals. But there is a way to just, you know, keep knocking on the door. And what we basically say is you just keep knocking on the door, because when you first pick up the phone to an organization and say, "Hi, I've got a property. I'd love to rent it out to you guys for 4 or 5 years, whatever it is you want. Is this something you're interested in?" Not all the time you don't always get the person that deals with it. So they were like, "Oh, we don't do that kind of thing here." But you know they do, but not that person doesn't know about it. So you then say, "Okay, all right, well, can I speak to a different department?" And you go to a different department, ask the same question. You have to kind of go around the houses to get to the right person, to eventually get to the right person. But it is, every council does it, whether they outsource it to an organization to do it for them, or whether they do it themselves in-house, they all do it. What their demand is what you need to find out. So in small rural areas, you might not have as much demand as you would in a big town center. Yeah.
So regarding the rents, does that go up every year, or how does it work?
Okay, so the government does do a review every April or pre-April, and they do tend to put some of them up. So for your benefits, for your housing benefits and your rates, you'll have one, shared room, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom is the most they go up to. And what they might do is they might look at it and say, well, we need to put up the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms, but we're not putting up the 1 and the 4 bedrooms. So they don't put it across the board, but they do put them up wherever they think the demand is most needed. So if they've got a massive demand for 2 bedroom houses and there isn't many people allowing them to have it because their rents are lower, that will be the increase they'll do, so that people will be able to get into it. But every year it gets reviewed, and every year I've had an increase of some sort, because I've got 1, 2 and 3 bedroom houses. So somewhere I've always had that little increase. Yeah.
And which one do you think work best of the 1, 2 bed, 3 beds?
Without a doubt, 1 bedroom flats or properties are the biggest demand. So single housing benefit people, mainly males, a lot of males, or a mother with a child, those are in massive demand, and you get calls all the time for those kind of properties.
So let's say then maybe a block of flats with just like 1 bed, and then just rent it out to a social housing would be very beneficial.
Huge, yeah, you get huge amount of demands for that, without a doubt. With I've got a letting agency that I've owned down in Swansea, and that agency gets calls every single day for 5 or 6 people saying, "Have you got any 1 bedroom flats? You want 1 bedroom properties for us?" Every single day, at least 4 or 5. So,
wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So when you're doing a calculation compared to private rental, what should you add? Like,
okay, so there's a website, and there's spaces you can go and find out what the housing benefit rates are. So if you're going to buy a property, for example, and you're thinking about going to an area, always look at what the social housing rate is first, and do your figures a bit against that, because no matter what happens, you will always get a housing benefit tenant in. You will always be able to rent out to that type of demographic, that type of person. And that's where we would kind of base our figures on. We then might say, okay, well, there's a big gap between these two. Well, we might talk to the council or to the charity and say, you know, are you interested in this property in this area? And they might say, yeah, we are. So you do realise that we can get, you know, £50 more a month if we go with a private rental. Is that something you can do? And they might say, well, let me go and talk, and we can probably do that, or we can come up a little bit higher, whatever. So yeah.
And should you have in your spreadsheet like Mo? I know you mentioned insurance. Is there anything else?
If you're going directly to a council, you don't need agents' fees. So you've got rid of that straight away, because your 10, 12%, whatever you're paying an agent, that's straight back in. So if you're getting slightly less housing benefit, let's say a 3-bedroom in Swansea, for example, is £500 a month. But if you're doing to a private tenant, you might be getting £550. But you're paying £550, and then you're paying 10% for your agent's fees. So actually, you're only going to get less than 500, 495 for that. Whereas if you go to a council at 500, you're going to get all of that 500. So you're actually going to be a little bit better off, even though the headline figure seems lower.
Yeah.
So you won't have agents' fees. Mo is something that I always keep, because, you know, if the boiler goes wrong, or if there's something like that, you probably will have to get that repaired yourself. Yeah. It's not something the council are going to replace a boiler for you. You've put the boiler in, it's something that you've put there. If it's a very old boiler, then maybe that you need to repair it or pay for it to be done.
Do you keep the same percentage rate on a private and social housing? Like, let's say a Mo on a 10% on a private, do you maybe put 5% on social, or you keep the same?
I keep the Mo the same. I keep the Mo the same. The thing that disappears is the agent's fees.
Yeah. And people that don't know what Mo is, it's maintenance.
It
Correct.
Is, yeah, maintenance, miscellaneous, other expenses, or there's various things, but it's basically a maintenance fund. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, create or have a separate bank account that goes into, so that, you know, 10% of your rent's going into there every month. So if something comes up, then you don't have to think, oh my God, where am I going to get that money from? You know, a boiler, £2,000-3,000.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly your boiler goes pop, and the plumber comes in, engineer comes in and said, you need a new boiler, it's going to cost you £2,000-3,000. If you've been saving your £50 a month from your properties, then you've got a good chunk of that there straight away. So it's not so painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any more benefits with social housing that I have missed?
I don't think so. I think the only other thing we haven't talked about is about your personal feeling about giving back and helping others.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest benefit there. If you're someone who has maybe had to be in social housing at some point, or had some help with your accommodation, or you've not had a home, and you want to help, certainly with any of those kind of elements, or people that have some sort of difficulties, then it does give you the opportunity to help those people, as well as you still making some money as a business. So you're a business, you're getting some money coming in, but you're also helping somebody else in society. So that's the major benefit if you're from that point, you're looking at that point. Some people just look at the money, and that's fine. That's what they want.
Everybody wins in the end of the day. Yeah, I totally agree. So as I mentioned, I'm a remote investor, and majority of the listeners and viewers are also. What obstacles can occur when doing it remote?
So remotely, you really do need a strong power team, a strong set of people on the ground, or a partner of some sort, somebody that you have. I mean, obviously, from an investment point of view, you're better having an English person or a UK person on your company to help you get lending. But also, you want somebody that's in the area that you're investing that you can really trust. That might be a really good letting agent. That might be a really good person to project manage things for you, or to look after things for you, because that's really important. And like everything, you've got to research that. You've got to check up on people. You've got to make sure that they do what they say on the tin. I have a lady at the moment who has bought a property. which I won't say where in case anybody hears this, but she bought a property somewhere with a promise from a guy that he was going to do everything for her and get it rented out on a 5-year contract for her at a certain amount of money. Now, that guy was not doing what he said he was going to do. And it was 3 months since the refurb had finished and he hadn't done anything and he wasn't replying to her. So I pretty much said to her, right, we found another person, another organization that's doing the same thing. Let's go to them. So she gave him notice to say, I'm leaving you. I'm off to these other people. And within 2 days, he had it full of tenants and was telling them that. so he was, and of course she was remote. She's based in a different part of the country to this part of the country. So he was kind of just being lazy and so I'll do this when I feel like it. What we have to do is, get those good people on board that will not do that, that have to think that, this is costing this investor money when it's empty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not costing me anything, but it's costing them. And you need someone like that. He had the whole team, so he did everything for her, but he was a bit lazy.
He was lazy.
Yeah, she was too nice to say anything, really. She was a nice lady and she wanted to help. And when she said to me, it's been 3 months, I said, right, we're leaving. And she thought, oh, this is what you're going to say to him. Okay, so, and then he realized, oh, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose it because he's making money on it. So he then suddenly sorted it out. Now, he was a good guy. To be fair, he was a good guy. He was a nice guy. He just was a bit lazy, that's all.
So this is a bit like predictions that I'm going to ask you. So where do you see the market going and what should we as investors think about going forward? Like, what would you do, let's say?
So my own personal opinion here is that we're not going to see any drop off in the demand for property, social housing, private rental, whatever is massive demand. And I mentioned that where I had within an hour, 10 people trying to come and view it. It's the same no matter what you do, whether it's social housing. There are councils now desperate for properties. There are organizations desperate for properties. There are private tenants desperate. And the rental market is not going away. So all you have to do is find the right area that's going to do the numbers are going to work for you. And you're not going to I can't see any slowdown in this. My big thing I mentioned to you as well, just don't be too greedy when it comes to getting the rentals in. Go with what's on the market. Go for the market rate or slightly below to make sure you're full and you're always full. And that's the best thing to do.
Okay. That was a good answer. So I have 4 questions that I always ask all of my guests.
Okay.
So if you have or had unlimited funds, who would you have as a mentor?
Okay, so I've got a couple that I would love to have as my mentors. One would be Richard Branson.
Yeah.
So Richard Branson, Dyson, and Alan Sugar, all are kind of the UK top guys that I would love to spend time with and have them mentor me and teach me. But one other that you may not have had said before is I read a lot of self-development books, and I've done a lot of self-development things over the years. And there's a guy, unfortunately, most of them have died over the years. So they've all kind of like people like Zig Ziglar are dead, and there are lots of people that are passing away. So the one guy that I think is still alive, but I'd love to have him on mentor is Brian Tracy. And I would. He's done some amazing books, some really good stuff, and I've read a lot of his books. I think I've read nearly all of his books that he's written now. But he's someone I'd love to have as my mentor. Yeah.
Good pick. So one book to recommend to your children. It doesn't need to be property.
Well, so it's more about investing and your money. And there's a book that's a junior edition, and that's Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. There's a junior version which basically very, very easily explains the difference between assets and liabilities, and explains how you should save some money and what you should do with it. I think that would be an awesome book for a child.
Sorry. One book for every investor, and that doesn't need to be property either.
Doesn't have to be. Okay, so the one book for every investor, anybody that's going on any kind of journey in this, is something called The Miracle Morning by a guy called Hal Elrod. That's all about, again, setting your day up, starting the day right, your first hour of your day, how you do things, You know, there's 5, 6 things he does that you do things like meditation, you do your planning for the day, a bit of exercise, a bit of journaling. But if you can do something like that, whether it's the start of the day or the end of the day, so you're prepared for your next day or the day that's coming, makes a big difference, real big difference, because you then say, right, I've got to get these 3 things done today, and I'm in a great space to start that.
Yeah, I've heard about that book, and I have it on my wish list or reading list.
The good thing about that is also on audiobook as well, because I like a lot of audiobooks if I'm driving.
Yeah.
So I have it on audiobooks. Sometimes I'll listen again to it, and I listened to it the other day, and there's some things, you know, you forget that he mentioned, and that's a good idea. I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I usually do that as well. Sometimes I read a book and then I listen to the audio, and then you snap up things that you maybe missed when you were reading, or the vice versa. And yeah, I really like it. So one property book then.
One property book. So this one you may not have had anybody in property recommend. It's a very old book, and you did some training with a company in England. And this company that you did the training with has actually started by this guy many, many years ago. And then things went their separate ways for whatever reasons. Now he's an American guy, and he's called Russ Whitney, and it's called Building Wealth. So some of the stuff in there is Americanisms, sort of. So if you're not from the UK, it's more relevant to America. But the actual process of what he's talking about, Building Wealth by Russ Whitney, is a really good book. It's an easy read, but it gets your brain going. It's, I could do that. I could try that. That's a good idea, and kind of all the things that we've talked about, plus the personal development.
Okay, I'm gonna write that one down as well and listen to it or read it.
He used to work in a slaughterhouse when he was young. His job was to kill cows. You know, so going from that to becoming a very, very successful property.
He slaughtered houses instead.
Now he slaughters houses.
No, but yeah, okay, good pick. Neil, thank you very much. And if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me along. You can always contact me at the cleverpropertyinvesting.co.uk website, or neil@cleverpropertyinvesting.co.uk is my email address. So if you want to have a chat, you've got some questions or run by me, by all means, just get in touch and I'll help you where I can.
Yeah, this was amazing. You've answered a lot of questions for me, and I hope for the listeners and the viewers. And like Neil said, reach out to him if it's anything. He has a training company as well, and coaching, consulting, as you can see in the picture. And very nice guy. And thank you for doing this again. And hopefully when I come to the UK, we can chat and meet.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. If you're over in the UK, Nana, and you're in the area, let's meet up and have a coffee or lunch or something. Yeah.
Definitely. So people, don't be stressed. Invest.